Okay, so now it's your turn to answer the following question. What does "his insides ached and growled noisily" suggest about how hungry Fred was? So, find the quote in the text, read around the text, have a think what the question is asking you, link it to the book, and then link it to what you already know. Pause the video here and have a go, please. Okay, so you might have found the quote in the text. So it's on the first page of today's chapter. "His insides ached and growled noisily." You might have then read around the text and thought, oh, Fred had already drank so much water, but he hadn't ate a lot of food. And then you might have thought you wanted to link it to yourselves. Now, when I'm hungry, my insides ache a little bit too, and my belly starts to rumble. And that's where it comes from, this phrase, his insides ached and growled noisily, because his stomach, we can infer from this that his stomach was obviously telling him that he needed to eat. So perhaps you might have had the answer similar to, it suggested, the quote, "his insides ached and growled noisily," suggested that Fred might have been extremely hungry. So there you've answered the question. You might have even gone even further and said, I think this because he had not ate since before he had got on the aeroplane, when all he had was an apple. So that's showing the reader that you have looked all around the text even previously, using your knowledge of the book, but also using knowledge of what you already know and what happens when you get really hungry, that your insides don't really growl, but they start to rumble, your belly starts to rumble, to then make this assumption that Fred was actually very, very hungry. Okay? This is one of your questions for your task today, but in your resource pack you will have all of the pages from today's reading. Don't forget, if you haven't already paused the video, to go back to your resource pack and make sure you've read all of the reading for today, because you will be having some retrieval questions tomorrow morning about those. There are about 5 questions that are similar to these. They give you a quote and they ask you a question about that quote. So really think about the language that has been used here, Year 4. Link it to what you already know about the book and what you know about this language already too. I have one final plenary for you to do, and then our reading session is over for today. So I want you to think about these following 3 questions, because we know we have been using Vocabulary Victor to help us today with how we can find words and phrases and decide what they are meaning. Now, have a think about these following 3 questions. What does Vocabulary Victor help you to do? What sort of question might Vocabulary Victor ask? And what do you think Vocabulary Victor would give as his top tip for when you are answering these questions? So have a think today. What have you learned today in this session? What types of questions have we been looking at specifically? And also, what would you say was the top tip to be able to answer these questions efficiently and effectively? Pause the video here now and have a think, please, Year 4. Okay, really looking forward to seeing what you have thought and what meanings you have got from these words that have been used in the story today. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you in our next lesson. Goodbye, Year 4.